been able to get to some of these fun stories. And look, they're all fun. I mean, let's keep it real here. Even discussing the woes of Liberty football at 1-3 and fans screaming for coaching staff changes. And there might be in terms of assistants in the offseason. I don't think there'll be a head coaching staff change, unless, Jamie Chapel just resigns, because I don't think they're firing him. And I don't think he's going to leave for another job, because usually you've got to be a much more desirable candidate than coming off of 3 consecutive regressing seasons. I mean, granted, it was almost impossible to repeat 23. So 24 was going to be a down year. And then 25 is the one that's been more of a surprise down year from that. Am I breaking any news for you, Trey, in the fast lane? No. Okay, good. Glad to know. Okay, good. Now that we got that done. So we missed some of these other stories. In the midst of Liberty's game against JMU on Saturday, something else interesting happened. For the second time this year, granted, apparently this was pregame, if I'm not mistaken, as opposed to mid-game, but Jordan Hudson, or Jordan Hudson, if you want to pronounce it correctly, went on the sideline to speak with Bill Belichick. So there are a number of things about this.
I think that's happened every game. It's been caught on camera twice.
Look, I'm just going based on what I've seen.
Have you seen the AI video, by the way?
No, what is the AI? Enlighten us, Trey.
I have to find it.
Okay. I got to get my usher on for a second in the fast lane, because, it's been a wild last couple of days. It is on my to-listen list, but I haven't been able to catch up on prior podcasts, so I've not quite listened to today's morning warm-up. Did you discuss this there today?
No, this is separate. It's an AI video from the video of Jordan Hudson and
this has got to be golden then.
And Bill Belichick. I just have to find it.
Okay. Well, while you look on finding it, it came to me a realization. So after seeing this once again, Jordan Hudson on the sideline. Like, we are in a unique spot here at the Virginia Talk Radio Network. Not because I coach anything of significance. I do not. I'm just a broadcaster. But my wife is a coach. Field hockey, EC Glass, they're making big strides this year. Had a tough 1-0 loss yesterday, but they are in a lot of these narrow games. Just need that extra oomph. Maybe next year with a little more experience, they'll be there to get over the hump in a lot of these closer contests. So they're making gains in progress. I've come up with a couple of ideas. First of all, this one is actually feasible. If we were to broadcast EC Glass field hockey games. Look, again, we're all in. JF Cavalier Football presented by TroStlaw.com. Great sponsors, great community support. Grateful for that. But there's no field hockey at JF, and there is at EC Glass. So, that's part of this. Additionally, if there were to be an opportunity, and, hey, stranger things have happened. This is field hockey's kind of in the lacrosse category. Soccer might be there. Tennis is as well, where, how do I say this? They're very well-endowed sports if the parents choose to part with their money, because the parents often have the resources to part with their money. And in some cases, they even own and operate businesses, much like some members, not all, but some of my wife, Coach Lane's field hockey team. So we've kicked around the idea before, and I actually did this when I was in Martinsville, of broadcasting high school field hockey games. You may go, why? It's a simple answer, really.
Dollar bills, y'all.
I have no issue broadcasting anything when it comes to local sports, because let's be real here. We like local sports in the fast lane. That's one of the big appeals to it. But then there's the other part. Remember Budweiser Leon? Do you remember who this guy is, by the way, Trey? He was a fictional athlete who had this large ego back in the day. And Budweiser Leon was asked, why, as a football player, he was taking up baseball.
As long as somebody's paying, Leon's playing.
That's our broadcast philosophy. As long as somebody's paying, VTRN's playing the game. Or,
if the wallet's open wide enough, I don't see any conflict.
If you're wondering why we would do EC Glass as opposed to Jefferson Forest, we do both. We have no issues. We'll do any of them. If you want us to do your school, by the way.
I was going to say, that means I would have to start calling games.
You might, or you might be with me on the field or in the booth. Maybe you'd be our sideline reporter, which has brought us to where we are now today. Bill Belichick's girlfriend on the sideline at North Carolina. If Bill Belichick in North Carolina built on that 7-0 emphatic start against TCU and won the game 48-7, as opposed to losing the game 48-7, or was it 48-14? I don't know. I think it was 48-14, but it was basically 41-7 by the time I turned off. And that was including listening on the VTR and Sports app. Again, didn't listen to it fully. Just got to confess to that. If you're winning games that's a spot. But if you're not, it becomes a distraction. So then, of course, I issued the next logical question to my wife, who's a coach. Coach, what would happen if we broadcast your field hockey games and we wanted to incorporate sideline interviews? You know who her favorite example is of how this would go, Trey? You probably have an idea. It would not be Loving, Belichick, Hudson, everybody allowed to say sweet nothings on the field during those moments. If I tried to incorporate sideline interviews with my wife, who does happen to be a coach, she would give it the old RIP to Craig Sager, but Greg Popovich, Craig Sager treatment, where Greg Popovich would just give 1 or 2 word responses. And after the third question, he'd go, wait, I thought we were limited to 3 questions. That would be my wife's reaction. She has been unabashed about that. It's how it would go. So how do you think it would go, Trey, if I decided to go down to Vince Bradford Track and Field at EC Glass High School in the middle of a field hockey game or even pregame to say anything to my wife? How do you think it would go? Do you think I'd be using the personal injury services of TrostLaw.com after that?
Pregame. So let me get this straight. Pregame, you would go down and mess with your wife while she's about to coach.
Yeah,
I would say no. See, the problem is you would call Trost Law. They would tell you. You would say their story. This would be a rare time where they would deny you and say, "No, we can't help you," because they would hear your story and say, "We like to win cases and we're not."
Oh my goodness! Ouch.
So like the 99, like the 1 out of 100 times that they say no to a case because they're great people.
They are. They're honest. If they
this
can't,
would be the one case.
So this would be the case where Trost Law would say, "We can't help."
The Trost Law would be on your wife's side.
Yes, they probably would. The point of the matter is,
the problem is different with football and field hockey is that field hockey does have a deadly weapon that's very accessible. Like you can't beat someone with a football.
My wife might take the stick out and
without.
hit me.
There's a stick.
Oh yeah. If I tried to go down pregame or midgame, and I don't want the whole gender this, gender that. Look, I'm the man and she's the woman. It doesn't matter.
Would you say I'm a man? I'm 40.
You know what? I'm not quite there yet, Trey. I've got about 3 months to use the line of Mike Gundy, and unfortunately, he probably won't be back in coaching when that time arrives. He is out now officially. We both discussed that, by the way. Morning warm up and Fast Lane, Ed Lane, wherever you listen to podcasts.
And guess what? We keep receipts.
Right there. But the point of the matter is this. Jordan Hudson and Bill Belichick, as much fun as we've had on this particular story here, it does not necessarily mean North Carolina cannot turn it around. Presuming, I'm not totally sold on this, but let's presume Belichick and Lombardi are at North Carolina next year. And even though they've had some struggles this year, there is a historical track record. And as long as you're going to provide players with
dollar bills, y'all.
and they see that there's a path to getting more
dollar bills, y'all.
in the pros, they will stick around through these challenges. And it's easy to flip a roster in a year or two, but Belichick and Carolina have struggled. Am I doubtful it's going to happen? Yes. But do I see a path? Absolutely. If you're performing well, nobody really cares about distractions that are going on in your personal life. Arkansas Bobby Petrino, as an example. They don't really care about that. But when you're not performing and you've preached a we over me culture and no distractions, and then every time there's Jordan Hudson around, whether she should or should not be a distraction, whether the players ultimately care or not about that, the fact that she's being brought into these stories, that's where it becomes a distraction that's unnecessary for North Carolina. And if they're 4-0 and they're setting the world on fire, nobody really is worrying about this. But the fact that they are 2-2 with their wins being at Charlotte and against, God bless them, as a Commonwealth school, but one AA FCS Richmond. Meanwhile, they've been uncompetitive in their 2 Power 4 conference games, Big 12 opponents, TCU and UCF. That's where you sit there and go, okay, this is probably not the best look possible. Granted, Belichick has never really cared about looks. We get and understand that. But there's a time and a place for this situation, and there's a way to avoid this. You can have clear discussions with your significant other. Again, okay, my wife is the coach, and she's not my girlfriend. She's my wife, Mead Lane, field hockey coach, EC Glass High School. But before she was my wife or fiance, she also coached field hockey. God bless them, Carlisle School, Martinsville, Virginia, great place. My wife coached field hockey there. So we had the same discussions of what would happen if I tried to do pregame interviews or halftime show interviews or come down during the game. And she vehemently denied that that would be a good idea. She was adamant. do not waste your time and energy doing this. It's very easy to convey that memo to your significant other. And I get it. We may wonder who wears the pants in the Belichick-Hudson relationship. That's probably a reasonable question. But the fact is, it may not directly impact winning or losing going forward, but it's an unnecessary distraction for a team like the North Carolina Tar Heels. Speaking of distractions, by the way, there's one way to distract you from the high prices that are going on everywhere else. It's InsaneRadioDeals.com, because the prices at InsaneRadioDeals.com are already a deal off of the list price. The Yard on 5th Street gift certificates. TJ loves the Yard on 5th Street. JD's Cafe. He likes it. I don't know if you've ever been there, Trey. Not yet. Also, the Caribbean Jerk Pot. So many other great food options await you at InsaneRadioDeals.com. Now, speaking of getting into the weeds, we will get into the weeds right now on the Virginia Cavaliers. We've touched on some Tech. We've touched on some Virginia, certainly on Liberty and JMU, but not as much on UVA, as they have a big game coming up on Friday and a chance for us to get.
The haters say we get into the weeds. They may even say we get into the weed.
Smoke weed every day.
Nah, we love getting into the weeds to discuss some cool sports details here in the Fast Lane.
So Virginia gets a victory against Stanford, and one of the realities is the fact that this team has done a very good job playing to a standard of trying to perform well. I don't take tons away from their victories because they've been against Coastal Carolina, who have, if you think it's been a struggle bus ride for Jamie Chadwell at Liberty, it's been even more of a struggle bus for Coastal Carolina without Jamie Chadwell. Then they got a loss at NC State. Great offense, not great defense. And then convincing victories against William & Mary. I was there. They look like two teams playing the same game, but dear God, can we please end these 1AA, 1A football matchups? Years ago, it was fun when North Dakota State could legitimately pull an upset, or South Dakota State or North Dakota or one of those schools. JMU too. Appalachian State. It's not as likely now because the talent will just get sucked from them to the bigger program. So you're seeing these matchups where the gap is extremely wide in those performances. But to Virginia's credit, they played to a level and a standard that gave them a convincing victory. And to the most part, they deserve credit as well because they did that against Stanford the other night. And as dominant as this Virginia offense was, they are at least excelling in an area called complementary football.
Just good complementary football. For the offense to get off to a fast start, defense with first special teams, creating good field position, defense getting a stop, offense going down and scoring and playing good complementary football, and then to finish the fourth quarter. Not giving up any points there in the fourth quarter. So just really pleased with the team effort, right? There's plenty for us to coach better at and to clean up, but just super proud of the guys showing up with a business-like mentality. They continue to have that each week and playing good complementary football.
Complementary football. To their credit, Virginia's done that. I'm still not sold on their defense. I am much more sold on the Wahoo's offense. Trey discussing that today. Mike Barber, Seville go now. Is that right, Trey?
Seville right now.
Seville right now. Thank you for correcting me. In the morning warm-up, wherever you get your podcast, because
And guess what? We keep receipts.
right there. But this is a Virginia team that, credit where it's due, they've largely taken care of business against the teams they should have beat. I go largely because I think in hindsight, we can say that they're probably a touch better than NC State, but they did not play like they were a team better than NC State in that ridiculous non-conference, but still battle of ACC games, which I believe Mike Barber mentioned that to you as well today, that Jim Phillips, the commissioner of the ACC, is strongly discouraging that to go away. And the return trip to Charlottesville next year for that ridiculous non-conference UVA-NC State matchup is probably going to be the last time, thank God, that we see something like this. But Virginia, they have played to a standard. They beat ACC foe, Stanford. I know it sounds weird to say as well, on Saturday night. And all of this gets them to the point against Charlottesville where, against Florida State this weekend, you want to be playing as well as you reasonably could be expected to play going into that match. And to Virginia's credit, they deserve that. Part of it's also the fact that they kept the intensity up that entire game against Stanford. Tony Elliott was noted, Wes Durham, who's done a great job for the ACC network, and again, to confess us, he's a friend of ours here in the Fast Lane. But Wes Durham mentioned, the pre-fourth quarter speech of Tony Elliott getting fired up. Apparently that even originated well before then at halftime.
Well, I was challenging him at halftime. Like we can't be complacent and we can't be afraid, right? To just play and not take your foot off the gas, right? Because then that's practicing bad habits. And so, the message was, man, just finish the fourth quarter. right? And this is what we play for. We train for the fourth quarter. And that's where I said, hey, you're tired? So what? I mean, it's a heart check.
A heart check. That's what it is for Virginia. It's really a check of how well you can play crisply to your standards. Because if you're Virginia, you're in control of that game against Stanford. Anybody could have watched that. Our own TJ Wilkerson was there on site. TJ_Wilkerson8. He'll have that coverage this weekend for Liberty at ODU, as he's one of our on location reporters and doing a fantastic job of bringing that coverage and insight for us. But it's also that, and it's the fact that the pre-fourth quarter speech is really about making sure you play to that particular standard and carrying it over going forward.
Biggest thing for me was just letting them know that we're not going to settle to just be, complacent, man. We want to, and I know this may not be the right way to describe it, but, in this sport, the good teams, when there's blood in the water, man, they go after it. Right. And that was kind of my message to the guys is, man, we had blood in the water right there at the end of the second quarter. And we didn't, and it's not they didn't want to. Right. But I can't say that that's OK. Right. Because, man, we need to be able to when we have people up against the ropes, keep going and keep playing to a standard and not be satisfied. And that's the whole concept of competitive stamina, is not competing to a circumstance, but competing to a standard at all times.
Because for Virginia, let's keep it real here. They bought a really good roster for this year's team. And that roster has performed well enough to get them to a 3-1 mark. They're going into a game against Florida State on Friday night where that's a drastically different opponent than anybody Virginia's faced. They're about a 7.5 point underdog. I think especially at 7.5, I kind of like Virginia to cover that spread, if that's where it still happens to lie. I've not looked at our picks yet that I'll be submitting for the Fast Lane on Friday with TJ Wilkerson and Ty Tracy. But I generally anticipate that that's what Virginia should be able to do, is at least keep this game competitive. And one of the ways to cover and keep it competitive is if you have a real explosive offense, you can stick around and be in a lot of these games. Defense gives me concerns. I have more faith in Florida State's defense, but I see a path to Virginia. And the whole blood in the water mindset at the end of the Stanford game is the idea that you're trying to keep yourself as fresh, engaged as possible, playing as well as possible, because what it took to beat Coastal Carolina, what it should have taken to beat NC State, what it definitely took to easily win against William & Mary and then Stanford is not just what it's going to take to beat Florida State. You're going to have to find a different level of consistency. You're going to have to still be as crisp as you've been offensively. You're going to have to shore things up defensively, and that is how they have a chance to get that victory. Speaking of ways to get victories, it may be a bit harder. It may not for the Washington Commanders. We'll get to that right now in the Fast 5 at 5-ish.
It's time for Fast 5 at 5-ish. 5-ish minutes on 5 relevant topics done around 5 p.m.-ish. Ish, because our counting skills are kind of ish. Let's start with number 5.
I get a real chuckle, and John Keim is a great reporter for the Washington Commanders, and he gets the retweets from Adam Schefter because they're colleagues at ESPN. But if I'm not mistaken,
And guess what? We keep receipts.
at Fastlane Ed Lane, where you listen to podcast, didn't Lake Lewis mention yesterday that Jaden Daniels is feeling better, but he's not sure that means Daniels is actually going to play in game 2 of our quadruple header Sunday on the VTR and Sports app in Atlanta?
He said he leans towards him not playing this week.
Yes. Well, that's amazing, because all of a sudden the reports have come out from Schefter and Keim that Commanders quarterback Jaden Daniels says he feels good and more like himself, but that doesn't mean he'll play at Atlanta on Sunday, game 2 of our quadruple header, which begins 9 o'clock a.m., 9:30 kickoff for the Vikings, quote, end quote, the Pittsburgh Steelers in London. I generally believe that's the case. In the win against the Raiders, I think not necessarily that Marcus Mariota shows he can get a win, but you've already got a win without Jaden Daniels, meaning that you can then afford to give more time to give Daniels rest. Atlanta's inconsistent. Commanders have not all been that consistent themselves, but the Falcons have been even more inconsistent at the beginning of this season. For Jaden Daniels, if I'm the Commanders, you have to be thinking long-term, because I view them in this way. I think they're the type of team that is probably not going to beat Philadelphia for the NFC East crown, but I think they're the type of team that can beat Philadelphia or anybody in the playoffs if Jaden Daniels is fully healthy and, quote, more like himself, end quote. That's where the level of excitement would be if I'm a Washington Commanders fan, and also a level of optimism that you can see something else developing that goes a little bit beyond that. Speaking of the NFL, by the way,
Number 4.
NFL Commissioner Roger Goodell has said that the league could, quote, begin renegotiating its media rights deals as soon as 2026, end quote. 4 years ahead of the current opt-out clause that they can exercise after 2030, despite the fact the league goes a couple of different years. This, according to Alex Sherman of CNBC.com. When I hear reports about this stuff from CNBC or Sports Business Journal or those type of sports business related entities, I mean, they're as plugged in as anybody to the sports business side. They are very calculated in how they get these stories. Here's the thing. The NFL is going to renegotiate as soon as possible because if you're somebody who has the rights holders to the NFL, that's the one entity that you cannot afford to miss. As much money is going to the NBA, as much as will go to the College Football Super League whenever that gets constructed and maybe a second iteration of how college football looks. There's going to be infinitely more to the NFL. And sure, the league, quote, needs agreement from its current media partners, end quote, which would be Disney, ESPN and ABC, NBC Universal, NBC, Paramount, CBS, Amazon, and Fox to start this discussion. If you want to be a good partner of the NFL, here's a novel concept. You know they control all the power that they have, as Melissa McCarthy would remind us.
Lots of power.
And if you say that the idea of renegotiating early is
Rejected.
the NFL will then say to you when you try to put a bid in to carry their games under a new deal, which only pays the NFL more money, that deal will also be
Rejected.
so we all know how this thing actually goes. Meanwhile, perfect, because Trey Law used to host the Foul Ball Area podcast.
Number 3.
Major League Baseball to use the automated ball and strike system in 2026. There will be 2 team challenges per game, and there will be an extra one awarded if you're out of challenges for extra innings baseball. Teams will retain challenges if they are successful. I love this concept for baseball. If you go as quickly as it seems to have gone, where you're looking at about a 15 to 20 second time for automated balls and strikes, there's no reason this should take any longer. And for something this subjective, baseball, for all its warts, they deserve credit because they have advanced when it's come to finding ways to incorporate technology into the game and do a very good job of that. Meanwhile,
Number 2.
a story that we'll discuss tomorrow with Danny Peters of FrenchStretch.com. NASCAR has hired a marketing agency. We won't mention their name because they don't work with us. But the goal is to, quote, understand the new world of the internet and how NASCAR could start reaching a younger audience, end quote. It was responsible for bringing, quote, the Rizzler, end quote, to the Daytona 500. I'm going to guess the Rizzler is like a social media influencer or somebody in YouTube content creation. I am not very familiar with this, but the point of the matter is I'm not supposed to be familiar with it. NASCAR is not targeting a 30-ish-year-old man like Trey Lyle, a 39-year-old gentleman like myself. They're looking for people in that like 18 to 25 demographic. And NASCAR, they have done a good job of this, but hiring somebody to be a consultant, if you're NASCAR and you have as many
Dollar bills, y'all.
as you have, this is not an expenditure. It is clearly an investment. Meanwhile, the other topic we'll get to with Danny Peters tomorrow,
Number 1.
Randall Burnett joining Trackhouse Racing in 2026 to crew chief Connor Zilisch. I don't know anything about both of these personalities, Burnett, the crew chief, and Connor Zilisch, the driver. But Burnett has worked with Kyle Busch, and if you've survived Kyle Busch, you can survive pretty much anybody.
And Tyler Reddick.
And Tyler Reddick, which, that might speak to the instability at 2311 Racing. This is a phenomenal pairing. I mean,
No, he worked with Tyler Reddick when it was at Rich Childress.
Yeah. But, I mean, he's been able to work with the instability of Tyler Reddick in his past. Yes, I should have been more clear. Thank you, Trey, for helping me with that. Burnett has worked with skilled, talented drivers who are very particular. Let's just say that. I like the pairing of Burnett with Connor Zilisch. This is a good pairing going forward. Do I think Zilisch is going to win the championship in his first year? That's a lot to ask. Do I believe he'll win a race or two? Probably so, because it's he and Shane Van Gisbergen as the 2 best drivers on road courses / street courses, and there's still going to be enough on the NASCAR schedule next year that if SVG doesn't win them all, the next logical candidate of who's going to win it is Connor Zilisch, not to mention this guy's a real prodigy within NASCAR. Meanwhile, when we return in the fast lane, high school sports. I don't know if we have any prodigies in the Seminole District, but we've had great matchups in the past and are due for more. Plus, Dogwood District play set to get into heavy gear as well. Ben Cates of newsadvance.com will discuss all of that. Then we'll shift over to the NFL, or at least the quarterback side of things, with Seth Wickersham, investigative reporter and author of the new book, American Kings, the biography of the American quarterback. That's still to come here in the Fast Lane.
The Drive into Fall sales event is on at Magic City Chrysler Dodge Jeep Ram in Bedford. Looking for financing as low as 0%? It's yours when you drive home in a 2025 Jeep Grand Cherokee with 3-row seating, or choose a brand new 2025 Ram 1500 and get 0% financing for 72 months. Huge savings are here at the Drive into Fall sales event at Magic City Chrysler Dodge Jeep Ram in Bedford, 1750 Independence Boulevard, MagicCityBedford.com. Through Credit dealer for details. Ends 9/30/25.
Get ready for the Star City Half Marathon, 10K, and Kids 1 Mile Run, happening Saturday, November 22nd. Participate in one of the region's longest standing running traditions, showcasing the Greenway and an after party featuring Roanoke's favorite foods, beverages, and music. Every participant gets a race shirt and a finisher medal. Don't wait to sign up. Register today at commonwealthgames.org/Star City. It's the Star City Half Marathon, 10K, and Kids 1 Mile Run, brought to you by Virginia Amateur Sports.
Love the outdoors, but not the bugs or dealing with the weather? Call Collins Custom Builders today to plan your sunroom or screen porch. Vaulted ceilings and windows all around, we can help you design your dream space to enjoy the outdoors while staying comfortable. Our customers have relied on us for 35 years to provide the best in service and materials. See some of our projects online at collinscustombuilders.com. Plan early and call today for your free estimate.
Feel the excitement, experience the intensity. Castle Coliseum comes alive when Hokie basketball takes the court.
He made it on 1 foot. Lead. It's down.
From buzzer beaters to hard-fought battles, Virginia Tech men's and women's basketball takes on the toughest teams in the ACC.
Step up and in. Here come the Hokies. Castle erupts.
Don't just hear about it, be there. Tickets on sale now at Hokiesports.com.
Hey, small to medium business owners, if you're frustrated with slow IT support, high costs, or paying for services you just don't use, it's time for a change. Hi, I'm Colt with We Fix Stupid Computers. We provide reliable on-site and remote support tailored for businesses just like yours. And we go beyond just fixing problems. We empower your staff with real tech knowledge so they can work smarter every day. From repairs to training to full IT support, we save you time, stress, and money. Call We Fix Stupid Computers, 434-525-8590, where smart support meets real savings.
Step into the fast lane 24/7 at Trey Lyle VT and Fast Lane Ed Lane on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, and wherever you listen to podcasts. Now, back to the fast lane.
So it's an interesting just dichotomy of looking at things, and we'll look to connect with Ben Cates of newsadvance.com momentarily before Seth Wickersham will join us around 5:45 today here in the fast lane. But there's certain scenarios where, Tony Elliott used the phrase blood in the water, and it's not necessarily a politically correct phrase, and it's not popular with everyone, but you sense an opportunity to seize a situation. And it felt like that's what we got at City Stadium this past Friday in the Jug Bowl, where Heritage jumped on EC Glass, and it felt like they had the momentum going early enough that when they did, after having dropped the last 2 games that they played in this rivalry, they didn't want to let it slip out of their hands. Ben Cates of newsadvance.com was there with his colleague and guest of the morning warm-up today, Bryson Gordon. Ben, is that a reasonable assessment of Heritage versus EC Glass in the sense that Heritage sensed, we're metaphorically speaking here, blood in the water, an opportunity to jump on an opponent, and knowing the intensity of the rivalry, you can't let a team like that stick around or else you might find yourself in a tussle you don't want?
Yeah, absolutely, Ed. Thanks for having me. It was very interesting. Friday night, this was a matchup that was billed as kind of Heritage's really strong multiple option offense against Glass's really, really tough all to the ball defense. And it turned into a rout really quickly. Heritage played really, really well in all phases of the game. EC Glass struggled noticeably. Especially with numerous bad snaps, put itself in really bad field position offensively, and then bad field position was giving up bad field position to Heritage on a lot of drives, and so there were some drives where Heritage would only have to go 40 or so yards to find the end zone, and did that relatively quickly. And so this was a if Heritage had played any better, I don't know that you could necessarily, but if they had played better and take advantage of another drive or two, it could have been a much bigger, different outcome. But as it stands, it's the largest margin of victory ever in this rivalry.
It's crazy to think about that in terms of the margin of victory in this. Is this a running up the score? Is this a letting out of frustration from prior years? Or is this a legitimate scenario where if you let a rival like EC Glass stick around, you might find yourself in the spot like the Hilltoppers were last year, where they overcame Heritage, and this year, not just Brad Bradley, but a lot of returning Heritage players, and you didn't Ben and Bryson Gordon did a great job documenting this in the week leading up to the game. But a lot of those players remember the feeling from last year, and they were never going to let up their intensity at Heritage.
Yeah, I don't think it's a running up the score thing. I think, Heritage punched a couple in there in the fourth quarter and kind of was just taking advantage of what Glass was giving it. But as far as memory goes, when you've lost 2 in a row in the Jug Bowl, you have to have a long memory, and you have to go into the game kind of knowing that you want that jug back. And I think that's what Heritage did. I think just prepared really well for the game. Glass, once it started having trouble, just kind of looked like it had a defeated kind of aura about it. And Heritage just kind of pounced. And I don't necessarily think anybody was looking to run up the score, but you do remember the past couple years.
Ben Cates 8 on Twitter, newsadvance.com, as Ben is with us here in the fast lane. Ben, how you respond to a performance like this? That's a reasonable question for both teams. First of all, for Heritage, you get a Rustburg team that they've been reeling this year, but there still is plenty of skill position talent at Rustburg this year compared to many years in which they've played and performed. How much is it now a challenge for Heritage to, as much as they enjoy that victory, flush it and make sure they don't have that hangover effect this week against the Red Devils?
Yeah, you got to be really careful. I mean, it's the week after not only you prepared really, really well and had to play your rival, that plays into players' minds, but then also just kind of the visuals when you look around City Stadium. It's not going to look the same. And when you go on the road, it's not going to look the same necessarily the next week or two. So you kind of have to put that out of your mind now. That game is over with, and hope that you can prepare with the same kind of intensity. I think that would be something that Brad Bradley and his players would tell you, is like, we want to prepare for the same intensity with the same intensity every single week. So that would be the goal. And then for Glass, it's going back to the drawing board. You got a lot of mistakes to fix, but you also have to keep players' heads high, and you don't want them hanging their heads in the hallway throughout the week. And you don't want them necessarily listening to all the negative things being said in the community. And that's one thing that Jamar Lovelace, coach at Glass, was saying after this game. He said, I'm going to continue to be that example for the guys. I'm going to hold my head high. I'm going to, keep telling people that EC Glass is a good thing and is talented and has a lot of opportunity going forward, because that's what my guys need to see, and that's what they need to implement going forward. So, yeah, I think that both of those schools have a lot of things to prepare for the coming weeks if they want to succeed.
That's a great point and a great way to look at this, and how you kind of bounce back from an emotionally charged rivalry, whether it goes your way or not. And that's the challenge for the Lynchburg teams, EC Glass and Heritage, as they get ready this week. Meanwhile, big game in the Seminole District this week is ours this time, as it's LCA at Jefferson Forest. Cavalier football presented by TrostLaw.com. Our 6:30 p.m. Central VA Flooring kickoff show will get things underway on our sister station 100.9 with our very own Ty Tracy. This matchup, will this live up to the hype that it did for a half last year before Gideon Davidson took over? Or do you see this being maybe a similar outcome to what we saw last year, where one team, and last year was LCA, is able to exert their will the entire way?
Yeah, I really like this matchup this year. I think that it's going to be one that is, LCA was like superstar team status last year. When you think, I don't know that people really have considered just how good LCA was. Could beat any team in the state, and would have matched up extremely well nationally with some program had they decided to do that. That was an excellent team, and LCA this year has a little bit of a different identity that it's going to have to find moving forward. It's only played 2 games now, so it's still early for LCA. Jefferson Forest has gone a little bit further in that department and has really kind of knows who it is by now with its 4 contests, and has played really, really well every single game, and hasn't had too many letdowns from snap to snap. And so I think the key for either team this week is finding that little bit of separation, whether it's, more than a touchdown, whether it's 10 points, 14, something in that area to kind of deflate the other team. And if you can do that, if you can hold that kind of margin for long enough, it may make a difference in this game. But I think this game is going to be pretty dang close.
Yeah, this one should be a fun one on Friday night over at Jefferson Forest at Sabre Stadium, as the Cavaliers are there for the first time in a month since their season opener against the Gretna Hawks, which is a convenient way to transition, Ben, into Dogwood District play getting underway. Alta Vista, they are 2-2, but they played as challenging of a non-district schedule as you could get. Maybe a surprising to a lot, but a 41-36 win at Blacksburg, a 4A school, after dropping to Central Lunenburg and Lord Botetourt, 2 and 3A schools respectively, and of course the win against Class 1 Riverheads as well. When you look at the Dogwood District, is it Alta Vista? Is it Alta Vista and Gretna? How do you view district play getting underway with teams that have records that may not belie just how good they'll be at the end of the gauntlet?
Oh my gosh, that's a tough question. I think right now it's got to be you've got to respect the defending Dogwood champs. So it's got to be Gretna, Alta Vista, and then Appomattox, I think. But time is going to tell for that district. It is going to be really, really, really interesting going down. I like this Alta Vista team. I think Gretna has the advantage of having a couple really excellent skill players, and is trying to put a team together in all phases around them every single week. And that's going to be the challenge for Gretna. But we're talking, when you talk about those 2 teams, you're talking about 2 really high powered offenses, especially when they would face off. And so when it comes to the end of the year, and you look at those 2 teams hooking up, it's going to be really, really interesting. I still like Appomattox. A tough loss to Buckingham, but Buckingham always plays Appomattox really, really well. So that may or may not be a barometer of where Appomattox is. We'll kind of have to see, but it is pretty interesting.
Trey will be at that game.
No, I was
Trey
at
was
that
at that
game.
game.
I was
Excuse
at
me.
that game.
Trey was at that game. I was talking about the Gretna Alta Vista later. He doesn't know his assignments yet, but he was at the game you just referenced. So Trey's our boots on the ground expert and analyst when it comes to that. Although don't you have to remain a little bit like unbiased? Is that the right way to describe it?
I mean, so I got yelled at during that game.
Yeah, well, some coaches worse than others. That's a tale for a different day, Ben. Meanwhile, tales are not large. They are factual and great at newsadvance.com and Ben Cates 8 on Twitter. Ben, great to chat with you. Thank you for stopping by with us today, giving us an overview of the Seminole and the start of Dogwood District play. So much to get into when we catch up again in another week.
Yes, sir. And Trey, you're nobody till somebody yelled at you on the sideline. So you're good. You're good. Thank you guys for having me.
It's our pleasure. Trey moving up in the world. That's the most important thing to remember. Meanwhile, we move up because, well, we go from high school football to the NFL. So it's the natural progression of football with somebody who was once maybe we'll call it JV star, Seth Wickersham, author and ESPN investigative reporter on his book, American Kings, a biography of the quarterback, discussing that with us next in the Fast Lane, from high school to college to the pros, all of that when we return. This is the Fast Lane, VTR in Sports app, and ask that smart speaker, open VTR in Sports.
It's so worth the drive to big savings at the Used Car Superstore on the Sheeler Motor Mile. Shop local and save more with exceptional service and selection. Your search stops here with over 900 pre-owned vehicles to choose from, plus a huge selection of new car brands in Southwest Virginia. Honda, Hyundai, Toyota, Subaru, Kia, Chevrolet, Mitsubishi, Chrysler, Dodge, Jeep, and Ram. 11 new car brands, 900 used vehicles, all in one location. The Sheeler Motor Mile gives you more choices with pre-owned cars, trucks, vans, and SUVs. You have miles in the teens, remaining factory warranties, and some are even local one-owner vehicles. More than any other dealer in the area, plus exceptional service, selection, savings, and financing options, and top dollar for your trade. Volume selling means volume pricing, and we've got the volume with 11 new car brands and over 900 used vehicles, all in one location. And we're proud to support our local schools and community. The Used Car Superstore on the Sheeler Motor Mile, your premier car dealer, locally and family-owned for over 50 years. I-81 exit 118C in Christiansburg. Call 866-SHEELER1. Always open at Sheeler.com.
When it comes to legal matters, there is no substitute for experience. Hi, I'm Randy Trost with Trost Law. We've gained knowledge from serving Virginians for over 4 decades. Since 1982, we've handled auto accidents and personal injury cases ranging from simple fender benders to complex tractor-trailer cases. And we're ready to put our experience to work for you. We hope you never need our services, but if you do, just give us a call at 777-HURT or visit us at trostlaw.com.
In most things, it's hard to go from ordinary to extraordinary. It's easy with your home or business. Call the Concrete Wizard and transform your place into an extraordinary space. If you're tired of looking at unsightly concrete, then bring light to your old surfaces. Call the Concrete Wizard for free design consultations, free estimates, and fast professional concrete resurfacing. And visit theconcretewizard.com for ideas from other before and after photos.
Hokie fans, are you still getting your Hokie sports news from someplace like ESPN.com or even worse, the newspaper? You're missing out. Tech Sideline has assembled the largest and most talented team to ever cover Virginia Tech athletics. If you want Hokie sports coverage that is second to none and will make you the smartest fan at the tailgate, subscribe to TechSideline.com for just $12 a month or $120 a year. Tech Sideline, all Hokie, all the time, period. Visit TechSideline.com and subscribe today.
Step into the fast lane 24/7 at Trey Lyle VT and Fast Lane Ed Lane on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, and wherever you listen to podcasts. Now, back to the fast lane.
So we had an interesting discussion earlier in the Fast Lane today, and it'll be up Fast Lane, Ed Lane, wherever you listen to podcasts.
And guess what? We keep receipts.
After the show, or you can go back already and check it out at Fast Lane, Ed Lane, or VTR in Sports on Facebook Live and YouTube. We talk high school sports because there's a joy in that, particularly with high school football. Somebody who was a high school football star back in the day. Star might vary, but he documents it in this great book, American Kings, a biography of the American quarterback, Seth Wickersham. Generous enough to join us in the Fast Lane. If you want a better version than what we just plastered on our streaming platform, you can look at the background of Seth Wickersham at Fast Lane, Ed Lane, and VTR in Sports on Facebook Live and YouTube. Seth, writing this book, how much was it a personal journey for you of reflecting back on your time, particularly as a high school, we will call it, star?
Yeah, star is a stretch. I mean, look, yeah, I played some quarterback in high school in Anchorage, Alaska, and I'm not trying to sound like the Alaska Uncle Rico here, but it informed it thematically. The book is not about, me as a quarterback, but like I knew enough from my little experience doing it that, you don't play quarterback, you live it. It is something you are. And I know what it's like to walk down the hallway as a high school quarterback. I know what it's like to walk down the hallway not as a high school quarterback. And if it consumed this much of my attention and identity and focus just in my little teeny window, I really wanted to know what it was like for those who did it as successfully as it's ever been done. And so, what I did was I set out to chart it. I wanted to know what it was like for guys in high school, what it's like for guys in college, NFL, now and throughout history, and then also what it's like when you're a retired Hall of Famer. And even though you left the game and you left being a quarterback being a quarterback didn't necessarily leave you either in your eyes or in the public's. And so really my goal with it was ambitious and a little crazy. And that was through the handful of characters that I picked to try to tell the story of every quarterback in one way or another. And that's what I set out to do.
From your personal journey of transitioning away from quarterback to the quarterbacks that you covered, many of whom transitioned because the game retired or not. Did you come to a realization, and we're chatting with Seth Wickersham, who wrote the book American Kings, a biography of the quarterback, which just released, by the way, congratulations, top 10 list in New York Times bestsellers. We can call 11th close enough to top 10. Others receiving votes on
it
that.
Was 10th. It was 10th hardcover and ebook combined. So 11th for just hardcover. So, you know, I'll take it.
Perfect. We'll go with top 10. We were trying to find a way to make it as big. But your colleague Marty Smith wrote a story years ago about athletes die twice. Is that more exacerbated at the quarterback position because it means so much, not just to the player, but to the team? Their importance is more elevated, and therefore it's a harder fall back to, quote, the real world, end quote, when you realize the football journey is over.
I think so. I wouldn't want to put anyone's individual experience ahead of somebody else's, but I'll just say that, like, look, quarterback is celebrated in America and really globally in a way that no other position in the game is. And so, and really across sports, and I would even say with global sports. I was with Steve Young and we were talking about all of the hats you have to wear to be when you're the starting quarterback for an NFL team. I mean, you know, chief motivator, matinee idol, field general, amateur psychologist, breathtaking jerk at times, you know, all of these things. And oh, by the, you know, spokesperson for a multi-billion-dollar organization, chief philanthropist, all of these things. And yet you also still have to go to throw the ball through these windows that nobody else can really see. And so I think that it's just different. And I think that what we celebrate and idealize and mythologize it for has a rebound effect. And because I think that, like, these guys, it becomes so embedded in who they are and how people see them that really it's two things. It's number one, being able to, when you walk away from the game, being able to have it be in its particular place where you're finally at peace with it and you've kind of reinvented yourself as something new. And then it's how the public sees you. I mean, the public will always see John Elway doing the helicopter, you know, play in the Super Bowl, no matter how old he is and no matter what else he accomplishes in his life. And I think that that's a challenging thing. Like Bruce Springsteen talks about how, you know, when he comes back from tour, he often falls into a depression because you go from being at the center of a universe that swirls around you to being a highly paid chauffeur back at home. And, you know, Springsteen has another tour he can go on, whereas for quarterbacks, there is no returning back to football. And so I think it's really difficult.
It's fascinating to look at that from our level. We're based in Virginia on VTRN Sports, powered by ESPN Radio. And we're part of the Virginia Talk Radio Network. And I mean, you know, we have some okay college football teams. I'll be diplomatic about them. It's not been a banger year in our area for college football. But high school football is such a big thing in our area. And it's even bigger in the rural areas, which we have covered some of those with our Virginia Talk Radio Network footprint. How much of this story about American Kings, a biography of the quarterback, have you gotten feedback on its relatability? Because so many people, their best level of relating to it, as fascinated as they are by the celebrities that you cover in this, it's the position holds such a unique mythical lore on the Friday Night Lights grassroots level.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, two of my main characters in the book, Arch Manning and Colin Hurley, who's now at LSU, you know, were in high school when I was writing about them. And it's not only, you know, the magical, you know, and mystical nature of Friday Night Lights. It's that, you know, we're specializing kids so much earlier. And there's an entire multi-million-dollar business built around the, you know, quarterback industrial complex for high school kids. And, you know, Elite 11, which is my sweatshirt that I'm wearing, I mean, that's one of the main showcases. And, you know, that's a really interesting space because, you know, kids from a very young age, and this isn't new, but it's definitely on put to another level when it comes to social media. You know, to be a good quarterback, you have to kind of believe somewhere deep inside that you're special and that you might be superior to everybody else, including your coaches and your teammates. And that meant you have to have it because there's so much pressure and so much scrutiny in the job that like you really can't be in a position where doubt can ever creep in. And it can be a beneficial mentality in some cases and a very destructive one. And you know, I think that like that's happening at a younger and younger age is, you know, entertaining and maybe cause for concern. I think that like if you go to Instagram, you see all these guys who are like these Instagram quarterbacks where you see them build as like the next Tom Brady and they're only 14 years old and they're throwing ambidextrous or they're scrambling around and, you know, throwing it between their legs, whatever it might be. And like that not only does a disservice to the job of quarterback in general, because it's not a beauty contest on who can throw the ball best, it also does a disservice and it frankly shows an astounding lack of knowledge of what made Tom Brady Tom Brady. And that's that like when he was at Michigan, he was broken and had to put himself back together again. And that's the lesson to take from Tom Brady, these astounding levels of mental toughness and self-confidence that came from a really dark time. And not, you know, all of these kind of theatrics that you see online.
Seth Wickersham, ESPN investigative reporter, author of American Kings, a biography of the quarterback, joining us in the Fast Lane. How feasible is it? Maybe we'll change this up instead of how feasible. What's the highest, best level of accomplishment that a quarterback can reach if they do not go the sports specialization route by, let's just say, 7th grade?
Oh, I think that they could be an NFL quarterback. I mean, I think Patrick Mahomes is the best example of that. And I think that if I were raising a quarterback, and I'm not, but if I were, I would have, you know, that kid play tennis and play baseball, rotational sports. I think that the other thing that's interesting about kids specializing is that I think they get bored with it. And I think that like you see burnout happen because of it. And I think that like, you know, again, the problem with all this is that it's within the context of quarterback being so celebrated. And, you know, the fact is that we're just so obsessed with spotting genius in its infancy. And, you know, I think the idea of having, you know, your kid up there on the stage, getting into the Hall of Fame with a gold jacket and a bust is so inspiring to some dads that like, you know, they'll pay anything as soon as they hear that their kids, you know, have a little bit of talent. But I think that like, generally speaking, I don't think specialization helps a whole lot. But that said, you know, look, Caleb Williams, you know, I write about him extensively in the book. I mean, when he was entering his junior year of high school, I mean, you know, he and his dad were trying to path a career chart, working backwards from winning the Heisman and being the first pick in the draft. And by God, they did that. They pulled those things off. You think about the odds of that. I mean, every year there are 16,000 or so starting quarterbacks in high school. There are about 1,000 in college at the highest level. There's 32 starters in the NFL, 10 good ones, and 3 future Hall of Famers, you know, at any given time. And think about what it takes to survive that winnowing. I think that like if you're lucky and you know, don't get injured and, you know, you have a chance to play, I think that like if you have NFL talent, you know, you'll get noticed, I think.
Seth, the best news you will get from the Fast Lane today is when you said Caleb Williams, I wrote about him extensively. My first reaction is, boom, our producer, Trey Lyle, he's going to buy a copy of this book right now because he can't help himself when the Caleb Williams name comes out.
That was a great
Awesome.
part. I read the article on ESPN.com about Caleb Williams.
That Seth Wickersham contributed to.
It was great. Gave me hope. And then the Dallas defense. If we played Dallas defense every week, and I'd have a lot of hope.
Well, there's a lot of that going on. Couple more questions for you, Seth. One of them being that you have a number of different compelling subjects. I think it's awesome, and it speaks to your investigative journalism skills. Not that you need our buttering of an ego or validation here in the Fast Lane, because we're small potatoes, relatively speaking, here in the world. But who of the quarterbacks that you wanted to interview for this, if you had to give us 3 that you did not interview, who do you wish you could have interviewed?
Well, there's some who are no longer living that I would have liked to. So you mean among the living ones?
We can go 3 living, 3 non-living.
Okay, so now it's like, the who do you have for dinner? If you could.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, I would love to interview Bob Waterfield. So, like, I spent a lot of time on Bob Waterfield in the book because a lot of listeners might not know him, but he was one of the greatest quarterbacks ever. He was in the first, I think, the first class of Hall of Famers, and what made him really unique is that he was the quarterback of the Cleveland and LA Rams, a superstar. He was a beautiful man. I mean, he was incredibly handsome, and he was married to Jane Russell, who was the country's biggest pinup star at the time. So you basically have like one of the country's first power couples, and he elevated the idea of quarterback. And I know that we look at like Tim Tebow or Caleb Williams, and we say, man, those guys really run in elite circles. And, even when they're in college, but like Bob Waterfield ran in more elite circles. I mean, when he was a college quarterback at UCLA, I mean, Frank Sinatra was a friend of his. And so he was someone who helped elevate that job to a celebrity status that people like, and a sex symbol status that people like Joe Namath took to the nth degree. I think Johnny Unitas is another one of them because Johnny, every quarterback is kind of culturally derivative of Johnny Unitas or Joe Namath. And Johnny, was just a fascinating guy. And, he was the first quarterback who truly came out of nowhere. I mean, he was barely drafted. He got cut by the Pittsburgh Steelers. And, he was the first one that, we first realized that, we can't spot this. We're not good at spotting greatness if it, it doesn't just fall into our laps in this particular job. And so I think Johnny would be another one of them. And then, someone I didn't interview that I think would be fun at that among those guys. Okay, I'll name one more, and he's no longer with us.
Can I give you for your last one? By the way, is Seth Wickersham is with us in the Fast Lane, W227 BG Timberlake, WVGM Abel Lynchburg, WMNA Gretna, Southside Danville, and the VTRN Sports app. Seth, you could, for your last one, you get a magic dose of truth serum that you could inject into them or into their food or drink so that they speak honestly and candidly for this series, which I get changes the dynamic.
Okay.
But you get one truth serum injection for your last magical guest.
Oh, I think it'd have to be Namath then. And you just say,
So since you already did that, who outside of Namath?
Oh, well, because I was going to say, you put Namath in truth serum and you say, tell me every story from the moment you walked onto campus at the University of Alabama until you retired from the NFL.
The explicit label would be going on that interview.
Truth serum. I think most guys are kind of honest. I mean, look, I would love to. I think people like Patrick Mahomes and Tom Brady and Peyton Manning, even though they come pretty close to being honest, I think there's still a lot about their careers and, about what it took for them to be great that we still don't quite know. I mean, they're still kind of in the public eye. And I think that like, they're not quite at the stage of their life where, they're unburdened by that stuff. And so I would love to like talk to those guys about all of the little tricks that really you only learn about being a quarterback if you have, if you're a top graduate with a PhD degree in that particular craft.
Great response from Seth Wickersham. The Joe Namath one, really. I mean, if you got truth serum out of them, those stories would be gold. I could listen to that for an eternity.
I would have a multi-volume book, I think.
I think you probably would. You'd have different editions. They'd all be bestsellers from the New York Times. Seth, we'll wrap it up on this. We appreciate your time in the Fast Lane. Your first book was It's Better to Be Feared, which was about the Belichick-Brady Kraft dynamic from the Patriots dynasty. It's more of interest, obviously, on a big level with what's going on in North Carolina, but also in our world because they're an ACC foe and they will play Virginia a little bit later on this season. Is what's going on in Chapel Hill providing more clarity as to how that dynamic was so successful and who the key cogs were? And if you want to debate Brady versus Belichick, you can go there as well.
Yeah, I mean, I remember being on your show talking about, that book. I would say no. Look, I think that it's a completely different situation. And, Belichick said, people don't realize this, but Belichick said before their first game, I think he said it to ESPN, we're not even close to being good right now. And, they've lived up to that, and I think that the fact that, they're off to, I think they're 2-2, right? And both of their
Yes.
losses have not been good and not been close. I think that it doesn't take anything away from Belichick. I mean, look, this guy's legacy is set. And I think that taking on a different challenge in college, which is really a completely different game. I mean, it's really not the same game, both schematically and in terms of its entire structure and setup. I think that it shows a guy who, what I think it reveals, and I think that I wrote a lot about this in the book, is that his longevity is astounding. And there was a time in his career where maybe he could see walking away from the Patriots and maybe coaching in the Ivy League, but kind of being retired. And I think that what we learned about with Brady, and I think what we learned about with Belichick, is that they need the game and on a very basic level. And I think that more than the game needs them. And so I don't have an issue with what Belichick's doing in North Carolina. I don't ding his legacy for it. He's the greatest, pro football coach in the Super Bowl era. And, I do think he'll figure things out there. I think he's too smart. He's too good. And, but obviously when he said they weren't very good, I mean, he was right.
Yes, they've had their struggles early on this season, and there have been some distractions as well, which have only added to the story, albeit it's almost...
And that's very inconsistent with the Belichick that we know. I mean, I think that the idea of what his personal life has become, now that, and the way that he's handled it. And I think the other thing, really quick, I think the other thing that surprises me about Bill is that obviously there are severe issues with him and Robert Kraft, and he's not afraid to let that play out publicly. And I think that all of those things are very different from the Bill Belichick that we watched in New England for 2 decades.
No doubt. It's a fascinating dynamic, and it's been covered in It's Better to Be Feared, which was Seth Wickersham's initial book that we discussed with him in the Fast Lane. He's got a new one, American Kings, a biography of the quarterback. I'm in the early stages of reading it, Seth. Glad to be able to discuss that today in the Fast Lane. Excited to be part of it, and thank you for sharing some of that insight with us today here in the Fast Lane.
My pleasure, Ed. Thanks a lot, man.
Indeed. Seth Wickersham with us here to wrap up the Fast Lane. That does it for us today. Now on to Freddie and Harry on ESPN Radio, joined in progress.